Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central, and here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another fantastic episode of Foxborough Central. I am Bob Hickey, your host, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join with me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. One of the services that are here in Foxborough that perhaps we don't remember or perhaps just should be reacquainted with would be the Norfolk Advocates for Children. There's a lovely building that was built on the grounds of the former state hospital. It's near the police station, and people perhaps drive by it on Pace and they say, what is that building? What do they do? And I'm honored to be joined here by my guest, FARAH Hill. FARAH, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And you are the director of the Norfolk Advocates for Children.
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. And also old friend, Michael
well,
Morrissey.
nice
Thank you so much
Sure.
for being here. Michael, of course, is our Norfolk County District Attorney, and he comes to our program every once in a while to share the information.
Whenever invited, so we appreciate
Always
the invitation.
invited, but he has many constituents that all are served through your office. But this is one case where we are going to do a little education and also talk about a fundraiser that's coming up, but also talk about the importance of childhood sexual abuse awareness, because April is
Child Abuse Awareness Month.
See how I segued right into that? I'm good.
Thank you.
So let's talk about Childhood Sexual Abuse Awareness Month. What does that mean, and what is it that we do at the Norfolk Advocates for Children here in Foxborough?
So the Norfolk Advocates for Children is, it's public and private. It's an arm of the District Attorney's Office. However, it is a 501c3 nonprofit. And what the center does is it collaborates with other agencies when we receive referrals of children that have been either physically or sexually abused, exploited or trafficked, have suffered neglect, or have been witness to violence. And through our center, we come together and collaborate with the other agencies to get a coordinated immediate response to these referrals.
So I remember back in the day when this project was first put out there, and the land was set aside, and I know it took a while to get the funding and everything.
Billy Keating did a ton of work on that.
Yes.
My predecessor, it's the model that FARAH runs really is a nationally recognized model of as we would tell you, the best way to get people help and the best way to get the appropriate information and story from people who are in crisis. But Bill Keating at the time had really made this a priority, and it's kind of good news, bad news story. He was around when they cut the ribbon, and I got all the benefit of using the facility.
It's the joys of public service, right?
Well, he's still in Congress doing public service.
Well,
but,
he absolutely did. He moved on.
This is one of his priorities, and it's a shared vision. I think people in the District Attorney's Office have both before, and FARAH has worked for both of us, and it's something that I think we think is the appropriate way to go. The NAC is a nationally accredited organization, so they go through a review. I know it's a pain in the neck because they complain about it. It's like every 3 years or
It's
so.
a certification process.
Every 5, yeah. So
Every
it seems
5
like
years.
every
It's
other
coming
year.
up.
So it's just to make sure that we are actually following the protocols that are recognized, generally used across the country. And I'm very fortunate I have talented people like FARAH and others who work in the
Well, it's always fantastic to have the right people in place. And the original vision was that this was going to be a place where it was not in the harsh hospital or interrogation environment. It's going to be more in a user-friendly environment. So not putting words in your mouth because I wouldn't know, but how has that original thought turned into the current practice? What is the environment there?
It's a very child-friendly environment, and that was the goal of Bill Keating as well as what we're carrying on now. And just for example, so that people understand kind of what the approach was before there were advocacy centers. If there was a referral made, for example, if a child was sexually abused and they told, their parent or teacher, all the different agencies would have to go through their separate investigation. So a child hypothetically would be talking to multiple people.
Which could re-traumatize
Which
them
could
over and over.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So the goal of the Norfolk Advocates for Children is to minimize the number of times that the child has to tell their story, and using the multidisciplinary approach, it has proven to be a good model. So the Advocacy Center, instead of the child going to all these different agencies and the agencies conducting their investigation at all separate sites, we have the team come together at our center, which is child-friendly, and the team is there for the child.
And the interviewers at work, and you probably, I don't know if you've been through or not, but the interviewers we have are forensically trained to handle situations. They go to a national training. We've put a number of people through, which like down in Alabama, I think,
Yes.
they go. So besides that, there's a nurse examiner and the people with psychological backgrounds in counseling. There are other people who have been trained as advocates to deal with people in crisis. So that's just our office. Never mind, the other people that come in from, DCF or even the local police departments and others.
And I think the important thing also to think about is all those professionals that you just spoke of, before this existed, that would be a different location,
Exactly.
a different
Right.
environment.
Yes.
And particularly when we're talking about children who have already gone through a trauma, at the same time, there's that psychological piece where that's their environment, that's their home environment, that's what they're used to perhaps. And so all of these other things may not be, oh, I've got a great solution, or, oh, just tell me your story, because there's so much more that goes into finding out what really happened and
Right.
being sensitive at the same time. In an evidence gathering
Correct.
procedure, you've got
Well,
to do certain
that's,
things, and there's
that's
so
a
many
critical
things
part.
that go into it.
Exactly. That you're dealing with young kids in many cases, and so having them feel comfortable talking to someone is very important, and getting the story out and weighing, the value of the story and the truth and veracity, and having people who know how to get to the story without tipping the scales one way or the other, but to get the truth out is important.
And that's so important to you, I'm sure, in your role as a district attorney, is to get the truth and make sure that people who perpetrate are dealt with, and that people who are in need, and we're not just talking about criminals, you're also talking about being a resource.
Correct. So in 2018, we received over 800 referrals of abuse
800.
To our center. And out of those referrals, there were over 100 interviews of the children. However, a small number of those actually lead to prosecution. So the focus, while it be on the prosecution piece of it, it's also to get those families and children that there is no criminal case, to get them the appropriate resources.
Okay.
And sometimes we have the resources right in the center, and other times we have a bunch of sister agencies that we have ties to and referrals and contacts. And
Well, I was going to say the referrals are so important, because if you have a one-stop place you can at least get started with, that's the important piece. Because
Correct.
how horrible would it be to have something and then just not know?
Right, right.
yeah, we've had 5,000, we've had 4,000 people go through in the last 5 years. And
That's a shocking number.
well, it's kind of a
Shows the need, but also
sad.
is a shocking
well,
number.
good news, bad news stories. That I think the fact that people are more aware that there's resources out there that they can report these incidences, or that's another thing that FARAH and the people down there do is they do training for mandatory reporting. There are certain people in the religious, educational, and other communities that, under statute, are the so-called trusted adult and have to be first. They have to give out the first report of a potential incident, and FARAH does a great job explaining to people in the community who have that obligation, who hold those positions of trust, when and how and what to do in those situations when a young child comes forward to a trusted adult, and this is what you're supposed to do. And so I think that has gone well. The training has opened up the eyes of a few people, and so there's more referrals that way. And the same as the domestic violence side. People say, geez, all these cases being reported of domestic abuse. They said, well, that's kind of a good news story, because people aren't afraid to report it.
Right.
And it's bad for societal point of view that there's so much out there, but the good news is that people aren't afraid to come forward. And that's the same thing I think we see here with the NAC.
And we here in Foxborough, of course, have gone through our own community awakening with the Bill Sheen case, and with the understanding that people in trusted positions can offend, and it's important to report and to be a mandated reporter and do your responsible
Well, again,
to know your responsibilities and to take that action, take that step.
Sure, and some of the people in that case would have fallen under the umbrella of mandatory reporters. And
Sure.
we've come a long way, obviously.
Come a long way. That's a great way of putting it. Of course, I'm speaking with Michael Morrissey, who is our district attorney here in Norfolk County. His office is at www.norfolkda.com. Telephone number at the office is 781-830-4800 if you have any questions. They do so much more than just this, but this is a very important role, and they're able to support you. Also, you can contact FARAH Hill, who's the director of the Norfolk Advocates for Children. Their office is at 508 here in Foxborough, 543-0500. And they have a website. It's www.norfolkadvocatesforchildren.com. Now, you have a .com, but you're a nonprofit organization.
That's correct.
You just, somebody made a mistake, or,
I'm not quite sure.
I think we got lucky.
or somebody else needs to land on it.
Right.
Someone grabbed it, so it seems to be easy enough to remember.
Well,
but
let's just remember that you are a 501c3, and the reason I
Yeah.
bring that up is because the work doesn't come cheap. And you actually had mentioned that you have 2 employees that are not funded through the DA's office.
That's correct. So when we talk about the Norfolk Advocates for Children, most of the employees are of the DA's office. However, the 2 employees of the Norfolk Advocates for Children are the mental health coordinators. There are 2 full-time employees. Unfortunately, because of purposes of discovery in court, we do not link the DA's office with those positions, so they're funded by the NAC. And that's why we fundraise to not only for those 2 positions, but also for agencies in Norfolk County that we have linkage agreements with, the mental health agencies in which we send the children and families to see to provide trainings for them.
Services, sure.
Exactly.
Yes,
Because you are a resource, and resources cost money.
correct.
yeah, we do okay on our end, but we can always use help. As Farah said, that there's kind of a bright line that if the other people were employees of the district attorney's office, not that we're not willing to pay them, but that would create some legal entanglements that would not.
I think we all understand its separation, and in order to be truly independent, you have to be able to say, I don't have a funding source. Whenever we're looking at anything in the news, one should always say, who is the source, who's the funding, research papers, anything, and I suppose it's even more important in criminal justice.
Right.
Well, some people, you're trying to get a prosecution or not, you really want to get the right answer and get the right help for people, and these people aren't swayed necessarily by the prosecution. They're not on our payroll, and they think you get a good, honest view of what kind of help and assistance can be made available without, that's their goal first and foremost, is to get help to the person. And as Farah said, we obviously look to these cases with an eye towards prosecution, but very few of them actually reach that level where we handle a prosecution. And so at the end of the day, I'd tell you a very, very high percentage of people we see end up with some kind of help and assistance, not prosecution.
Excellent. Well, that's always that's a nice outcome, because from a trauma, there's a solution.
Sure. There's a place for
Other
people to
than-
go. Right. There's a place where people can go and get some help. I mean, we're not alone in offering people help, but I think we offer a good gateway into the system to get help. I mean, in the district attorney's office, it's not always about prosecution. A lot of it is about prevention, education, and obviously the outcomes sometimes. I always say to someone that finding someone guilty isn't necessarily not always the right answer. It is for a lot of people, but getting people the help and assistance they need is really, I think, the general goal of the office. And
Excellent.
no one does a better job than the people at the NAC.
Well, we love having the NAC as part of our community, and for those of us who live in the community or live in the region who are listening to this program, you should know that these services are mostly funded through the district attorney's office, but not completely, and so the rest of it has to come from fundraising. There's a great fundraiser coming up. I'm sure you've heard about it. I'm going to share the information now, so let's talk a little bit about the fun run that's coming up. It is going to be on April 27th.
April 27th, Saturday.
And what is it called?
It's the Kids Superhero Dash and the NAC Norfolk Advocates for Children 5K.
The Kids Superhero Dash.
Oh,
Yes,
that's the
so
best
they get
part
to
of the whole
dress up.
day.
Absolutely, I love it.
And the adults do too.
They only run. The kids only run. The kids only run what I can run. It's a very short period, that they run in their costumes. So,
Mr. Morse, I have faith in you.
and trust it, they can beat me. But the kids come in costumes, and there's really just a small race for the kids, and a lot of the parents obviously, bring the kids, and then the runners, the serious runners, will go out and run through the neighborhoods of Foxborough, and the assistance of the Foxborough Police and others, make sure everybody's safe, and they get sponsors and raise some money, and everybody seems to have a pretty good time.
Well, let's talk about that then. The 5K race is going to be held at 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, April 27th. Yep. It's going to be a beautiful day. I already know that.
We hope so.
The weather will be perfect. The snow will be melted. It'll be before your kids' baseball game. So you should come on out. Take the time, because it is a course that we've run here in Foxborough before, but it's very important. The cause is important, and the money raised goes towards funding the services of the Norfolk Advocates for Children here in Foxborough. So you can log on to their site, www.norfolkadvocatesforchildren.com. Find out all the race information. If you need more details, you can call them at 508-543-0500, and they'll be happy to point you in the right direction. And this is going to be a fun day. It's not just a 5K. You mentioned superheroes. Yeah. So are we supposed to come dressed in costume?
Well, you and
Can I come dressed as underdog?
You can. That would probably be allowed. The sad part is, though, that we'd probably get beaten by 6- and 7-year-olds. So I just wanted to, as long as you don't mind being, being outraged by.
Have no fear, underdog is
never
here.
know.
Some of those kids are pretty quick.
Outstanding. So it's a fun day all the way around. It's a fundraiser, and there's a little bit more going on. So it's well worth taking
some
time.
raffles afterwards.
Bring the family. Is this one of those types of things?
Absolutely. And if you're not a runner, we'll even let you walk.
There you go. Well, I like that.
Pretty flat.
That works for me. Yeah.
Pretty flat. Pretty flat. I won't say exactly flat.
A couple hills.
No, we know Foxborough. It's a good place to do a 5K, and you're right. It is.
It's a great route.
Course,
it is a great route.
So that's great, and that is located on Payson, and so the event is taking place in Payson. So if you think about location, it's really the back parking lot of the police station, and up that way. So that's and across the street from the playground, the Charon Wasson Pavilion there at the former state hospital. So we know where it's at. It'll be a great day, and it's going to be something that's for a good cause.
Absolutely.
And we also do a lot of speaking to groups in town or others that FARAH in particular, and some of the people at the NAC even. I have gone out and we've talked about the different types of services and about mandatory reporting and things like that people should know about.
Is that different from our town-wide program that we've implemented, the Darkness to Light, that shares what are the signals or the signs of potential abuse, and how do we as adult volunteers ensure that we're doing the right thing?
It's similar. The curriculum that I use when I go out and do these trainings, and usually it's in schools in the community, is from the Massachusetts Children's Alliance. So as DA Morrissey spoke about the national, we're accredited nationally. Our chapter is the Massachusetts Children's Alliance, and they have come up with this curriculum. It is pretty much the same. It goes over, different signs of abuse and what you should do if you're a reporter in that type of situation. It just goes over and gives them knowledge as to what our process is and our protocol. And I've received very good feedback from people just knowing who we are and why we're asking them to report in that way, and I just think it's really helpful to have that knowledge.
Education is power, and
Absolutely.
It's important that we are educated, because it's a horrible thing to know that you could have done something had you known better or more. And
Absolutely.
when 20/20 hindsight is exactly what it is.
Well,
but if we're there and we can do it at the time,
you
how
mentioned
much more
the Sheehan
impactful is
cases
that?
a while ago, obviously, but there are people that we have to get the word out to that still work with our young people that are in positions of trust and power, and particularly in our schools, which is why we try to reinforce the idea is circumstances, what will trigger a mandatory report, and tell them that you may be. We're not looking necessarily to prosecute someone, but again, we want to make sure that we get the story and we get the help and assistance if necessary. And that also sends a community ballistic too, as you know, that when they find out after the fact that someone who may be in an educational community or some other position may have missed all the signs, that really lights the board up.
Sure.
And we're trying to avoid that because we're still trying to make sure that we do the right thing by the victim and get them the help and the assistance, and make sure that the adults know that there's no shame on contacting the police and others involved in a case like this, because they will handle it appropriately.
Very good. So how did you get involved in this in the first place?
I made her.
True. I was asked to. I am an assistant district attorney with the DA's office,
Okay.
and I have been since
So you have a legal background?
2007.
Attorney, and
Yes.
still trying cases where you
Yes.
don't let her escape.
Really?
You still try some cases.
Yes. And back in 2014, I was asked to come into this unique position as an ADA and the director of the Norfolk Advocates for Children. And I have to say, I didn't know everything about it when I went into it, but it's a great model that we have, and everyone does an amazing job, and I'm really glad that I'm in the position that I'm in.
Good. That's
Well,
always
having
one thing to
someone
be
who-
passionate about what you do.
Having someone who understands what it takes to put the case on in a court of law, what would be prosecutable and what is not is very valuable to us. And FARAH has been there in the courtroom, so she understands that. But having someone who's also compassionate, work with victims and their families, and she has done that as a prosecutor. So, and to work with advocates, it was to us kind of a natural fit. And as you know, she's homegrown, she's a local person.
Well, I
and
was going to
she's-
say, it sounds like not only did you find the right person, but you are from around here. And
I am.
you-
I am.
And also since 2014, so you've been in this position for 5 years,
So
and it's longevity and consistency.
Even before that, I mean, she was hired by Billy Keating, so she has a lot of years, she has a lot of experience, and that's why we think she's the right
Excellent.
person for the job.
We're really glad that you're here, and I'm going to give you the last word. We're so close to being out of time. First of all, FARAH Hill, thank you so much for being here. She is the director of the Norfolk Advocates for Children. The telephone number is 508-543-0500. Very important that you know that they are a community resource, not only on the prosecution side, but also as an educator and as a one-stop shop, if you will, for services for children who may have been abused, may have been part of a domestic situation, or who may have been traumatized in some other way, either witnessing or being, you mentioned
Neglect.
trafficking. There's just so many
Yeah.
different ways
There
that we can be mean to each other, and it's important that we
Absolutely.
know where to go to seek those resources.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here, FARAH. And also, I wanted to thank our district attorney, Michael Morrissey. Thank you for coming back in.
Yeah,
As
nice to see you
always,
again.
the service
Sure.
you provide to us is
Makes it easy when I have good people.
well, that's what I always say. Surround yourself with great people, and then you can go forward. So I give you the last word. Of course, I remind folks at home that you can also find out more about Mr. Morrissey's good works by logging onto their website, www.norfolkda.com. That's their portal that you go into and access all the services through our district attorney's office. You can also reach out to his office at area code 781-830-4800. And before we end this and go with Michael, reminder that there is the 5K kids superhero run. It's going to be on April 27th, Saturday, April 27th at 9 a.m. You should log on to the local Norfolk Advocates for Children.com site to get more information to register and be part of that wonderful event. So April 27th is a very important date. Don't miss it. Don't miss it at all. Mr. Morrissey, I give you the last word, sir.
We're only as good as our community partners, and here in town, in particular, we're very fortunate. Chief Baker and the members of the police department, as well as your school system, are really great allies for us in many of these issues. I mean, they're not bashful about taking advantage of the services or making referrals. We think they help them get a better result, and that's true of most of the counties and most of the communities in Norfolk County, but particularly in Foxborough. I mean, it's in your backyard. They know that it's here. I think that people, and we appreciate you helping get the word out, because, as FARAH said, we're really, our first goal, well, prosecution is something we have to look at, but as things go down the line, it's usually just the number of people that get help from us is really what we think is the most important part of what happens at the center.
Well, thank you for everything that you both do, and thank you for taking time to join us here in Foxborough Central. Of course, if you missed any part of this program, you can check us out again at our website, www.fcatv.org, or be a subscriber on our YouTube channel, Foxborough Cable Access. We are so out of time. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, Foxborough, I will wait and see you on April 27th at 9 a.m. for the Kids Superhero Run to benefit the Norfolk Advocates for Children. Take care, everybody.